Ahead of the inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix, you are listening to Unlapped, which is supposed to be a multi-platform show talking about racing. Well, gentlemen, not much racing to speak of, just 10 minutes into FP1 here on Thursday night in Las Vegas. I am not Katie George, I am Gary Striewski, filling in left to right. Dalen Cuff, Laurence Edmondson, Spencer Hall, Nate Saunders joining the program. Of course, guys, we're here. We should be watching these cars go around their first practice session of this Las Vegas Grand Prix. This isn't a situation that we've not seen before, but Laurence, given the circumstances around this race, some of the chatter with these drivers, not necessarily loving the pomp and circumstance around it. This is the last thing, a loose drain cover. Now the FIA has said there's a couple of them that are compromised on this track. This is the last thing F1 and FIA wanted to have happen.
That's right. We have seen this before. Last time was the 2019 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but this situation is actually slightly worse. There it was just the...
Oh, great.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent, let's do this.
Just to kind of set the tone there. But so in Baku, the manhole cover came up from the area it was welded, but the frame of the manhole cover, like the bit that it sits in, was still there. Here, that whole frame has lifted up. So basically the cars have gone over them, and you might say, well, you know, how the hell does this happen? Road cars go down there all the time. Well, Formula One cars creating so much suction underneath the car,
sure,
which is what helps it stick to the ground, go around corners fast, that when it went over, it literally just pulled the whole of the casing of the manhole up and out of the ground. We saw Carlos Sainz stop on track. We know that at least Esteban Ocon also has damage on his Alpine. And so, yeah, two cars hit with it, and then obviously unable to run because it's a huge safety issue, huge safety issue. And we don't know at this stage, we're talking after first practice, we don't know whether second practice is going to happen, and we don't know what the solution is going to be long term.
So at this point, I was walking from our position on the paddock to the media staging area, and in between that time, I get there, I see Dalen, he's pointing at the Ferrari, and I go, oh, another mechanical issue with the Ferrari. This, of course, before we understood that drain cover effectively sliced or did something to compromise that Ferrari's drive chain to such a degree, Nate, that we don't know at this point. They've canceled FP1. Now with the structural integrity of those drain covers, now multiple of them on this brand new course, what the heck is protocol here?
So, well, I mean, it's a great question. So what the FIA said is they've now got to check every single manhole cover on the circuit. And, you know, these are public roads. There's a lot of these things.
Sure.
And I think we just heard from the FIA when the incident in Baku happened that Laurence mentioned. I think it was 220, is that right, that you said? 320.
Oh, great.
So obviously for safety, you can't just go into this session now and say, oh, well, we've checked the two that came up. I assume the rest will be okay. You've got to go check all of these now. And Formula One, this is where now we've been talking so much about the late starts of these events. Obviously, FP2 starts at midnight local time. That was done kind of to limit some of that disruption for locals. You know, it meant the roads would shut for less time. You wondered, does it mean they've actually limited themselves to just 2 hours where they
sure,
can put this on? Because, you know, if they go past the allocated time for FP2 and they're still looking at that issue, they're still checking them all, they might, like Laurence said, we don't know yet, but they might have to call the whole session off for safety. And I mean, that would be a nightmare start for this race. So that's protocol, and from what we've seen, there's pictures going around, there's a lot of people working on these,
yeah,
you know, especially the two that are broken. So really unprecedented in terms of not knowing, you know, how long this will take. So we'll see from now.
What I think is interesting too is they cancel, those roads are open, to your point, till 5 o'clock today, and that's the deal, 5 o'clock local time. So there's not a lot of time going. People will look around and be like, well, what the hell? How are we going to make sure this stuff doesn't happen if you have the roads open? And to your point, the road is going to be open again tomorrow. And to Laurence's point, the force by which, this is what I don't understand, the force by which those cars move, unless those cars are going over those covers, how do you ensure that this doesn't happen again? Like, how do you actually check the situation? Because you obviously did it once and you thought the integrity was fine without having the cars on them. I just don't understand how you actually make sure the issue doesn't come back, either in FP2 or FP3 or whenever we go again.
Yeah, and to make the issue concrete and to show how dangerous this can actually be, didn't mean to make a concrete pun, but it just happened.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Yes, you did.
It's Vegas and you're a showman.
I have another one coming up, okay? Because F1 is starting in a hole, just like a lot of people on their first
All right, take his mic. Let me take the mic.
Yeah. But I might leave. I can't beat that.
Out of here.
It's about show business, baby. look at Jenson Button at Monaco. If you want to see what a drain cover can do to a car, Jenson Button in Monaco hit a drain cover that popped up. It's like hitting a bomb, okay? Doing this at speed is extremely dangerous. So if it looks like a small issue, it's not.
We're coming to you from the center of this newly constructed paddock here, just off of the Vegas Strip. And just to sort of paint the scene, it's just before 10 o'clock local time, and the team principals are going to be speaking to the aggregated media just behind us, and that's when we're going to start getting their initial blush reactions on exactly what they're dealing with. Some of the cars that weren't affected, but effectively every single car, every single team. And Nate, if you can emphasize just how important this practice session was on a new track, on a new circuit, on a brand new road here that nobody is familiar with.
Well, exactly, and not only that, they don't have support series here, so there's no grip on the road. Like you said, all they've really done is either on the games or in their simulators, they've been practicing these circuits. I spoke to a couple of drivers yesterday. All of them said the first session, especially, is going to be quite basically us just kind of nursing our way around, making sure we don't end up in the wall. They've now lost that hour, and you think now everything they lost in this first hour, they've got to do if we do get FP2. It's put them all on the back burner. A street circuit's all about confidence. So, you think about tomorrow. Hopefully we still get the 2 hours left. Formula One teams are very good at making up lost time, but it's never ideal. And I mean, if you think about, some of the laps we've seen from Max Verstappen at street circuits.
Yeah.
Street circuits especially are all about confidence and hooking the lap up, and you do that over a process of practice. You get into a rhythm, and these drivers now, some of them completed 1 or 2 very, very slow laps, but that's it. So they're all at the same point they were before the session. For them it's not ideal at all. It's
17 quite literally blind corners now that these drivers were anticipating at least getting a touch of familiarity with, just so that way they can say they've put eyes on track. Now they can't say that, but of course it is F1, it is analytical, there should be contingencies on contingencies. Laurence, what's a contingency in this situation?
Well, that is what's being discussed right now.
Okay.
So they've got engineers in there with the circuit officials, and they've got engineers out on track looking at what they can do. And so once they figure out what is the solution, how do we fix this? And F1 is good at finding ways to fix things. The question then will be, well, look, how quickly can we do it? We've seen previously sometimes schedules can get moved around. As Nate said, there's no support schedule here. So usually we'd have other race cars on track. Because there's nothing there, maybe they can move things around tomorrow. Like if you just move second practice to a little bit earlier in the schedule tomorrow, still have third practice and still have qualifying at midnight as it was meant to be. But then you're also dealing with TV schedules, things like that. People have the times that they're going to tune in. TV companies have set out times to go and watch it. So there's never an easy solution in these situations.
Real quick on the TV thing that I find interesting, we are in America. We're trying to grow the sport here. That's why we're us 5.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah, boy, let's go. Us 5 donks are sitting out here talking. Because they want to grow the sport, they want to be important. I want people to tune in. And to your point, 15 minutes into this, ESPN 1, ESPN 2 are now showing the same programming. This content is very rarely on ESPN 2. It was tonight. The FP1 is very rarely giving that prominent of a placement. People I'm friends with, one of the guys calling a basketball game here, I've never heard him mention F1. Of course, he texts me, track defect? What the hell? Like that's his take. And now, unfortunately, in America, we will give you a shot, and if you don't get there, you're gone real quick. So that's like, these moments are important, and that's what's really unfortunate about this incident in this race. That's why the rest of the weekend's got to go at a whole different level. Otherwise, this is going to be a problem.
Dan, you're absolutely right, and I think all week it's felt like Formula One has kind of been treading water a little bit. We've known some of the controversy, some of the things people have been saying. Max had a dig yesterday at the glitz and glamour of it. You felt from talking to people in Formula One, they just thought, wait until the event starts. Because visually it looked unbelievable when that session started on TV, and that's what Formula One was going for with this event. I think they thought, look, there's going to be criticism locally. There's going to be people saying, this event's way too overhyped, and you just got the feeling that they thought, as soon as that event starts, we're fine. We've got past it. So now they've got to almost restart that process, and it's just they must be like knocking their heads against the wall now, because this is exactly what they didn't want to happen.
And Schadenfreude is the word right now too, by the way.
Yeah.
People are laughing and cackling. Twitter's going nuts. People are enjoying the misery, unfortunately.
Listen, Vegas wasn't built by the good fortune of winners, but better this happens, I guess, night 1, then race night, when obviously it really matters. And of course, we're spinning it optimistically. There's going to be a race night.
You're doing a great job.
Hey, listen, there's going to be a race night. We spent the last 10 minutes embracing what the reality was in this first FP1, canceled within the first 20 minutes. Somebody got 4 laps in. Good on them. Let's spin it forward, though, because you mentioned the aerials are insane.
Yeah.
You get here, and it seems like and it feels like, now for our viewers, they'll understand, but for our listeners, just close your eyes and imagine that you're firing up the Xbox and now you're in the waiting room of Need for Speed Underground. Like, it is insane, Spencer. The visuals here, it's Vegas. They do everything big, and it feels awesome to be here, circumstances considered.
We're going to overthink this. We're all going to overthink this because that's our job, is to overthink this and to overanalyze and to make the most out of every little bit of information we can get. We'll especially do that tonight because there's no information. There's 9 minutes of action before this stopped, okay? But I think the casual viewer, one, probably not tuning in for a whole lot of practice. I know, all right? They're probably not paying that much attention. We're going for race night, okay? I think there's still a lot of hay to be put in the barn. There's still a lot of success to be claimed down the road if we get a successful event, because, and I'm going to do my best Gary Striewski imitation here, if you come away from watching this race and you say, oh, that was sick, bro, that's all you want. You just want, like, the sick bro effect, right? And we're still on for that. That's possible because I think a lot of times, you know, we're trying to get into the, like, construction of concrete and what it's going to take to fix this. The casual viewer, they just want to see the bright lights, okay? And I will tell you, just from this paddock alone, the scale of this event is monumental is one word, huge, intimidating. I mean, it is going to look incredible if and when they pull this off.
You also just described Dalen in the gym. Huge, incredible,
Huge,
super intimidating.
Incredible, swole.
I'm not going to argue with you guys. You're dead right. You're just dead right.
I was going to say, Spencer's Gary impression, the watch threw me. As soon as I saw the watch you're wearing, I couldn't buy it.
No. This is like
nothing against your watch.
$70.
Yeah, exactly.
Watch is catching strays now.
But I think as well, just on that point, I think that is fair, because when the incident at Baku happened in 2019, it didn't overshadow that event. That event still went on. As you mentioned Monaco a few years ago. I remember there was Malaysia one year. Roman Grosjean went over a drain cover, and that's not a street circuit. That's a real circuit. That race went on, you know, as planned. So this is something that if they can fix it and if they can remedy it, it just becomes a footnote of the event. And you're right, practice is practice. We kind of talk about it all the time because we're here, but for most fans, this starts midnight tomorrow, really, the qualifying session. So we'll see how that plays out.
Spencer, I'm going to take your now. It was a good analogy for the media center. It wasn't a pun. But you're right. I mean, I'm down a couple hundred right now on the blackjack table. I got mauled earlier. But if I leave here up a couple grand, that's all I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to go back to day one and complain about my losses.
And what does every gambler say on night 2? Comeback begins now.
I'm going to like 3 hours. But you're right. There is a night 2 and a night 3 in the events case.
It's all about chasing winnings, and night 1, for all intents and purposes, is done for Ferrari because, as we mentioned, team principals are talking behind us. Ferrari just took to the mic. Fred Vasseur calling this unacceptable, saying Ferrari will have to change the chassis, will definitely miss FP2 with Sainz's car, and that, of course, is our friend Chris Medlin reporting, which, of course, doesn't come as a shock. But Ferrari taking a hardline stance saying this is just unacceptable. You've had how long to ramp up for this, and a drain cover is going to ruin our night?
Well, it's true as well, and also the cost of losing that car. You know, I mean, we're in this budget cap world. Okay, we're at the end of the season, and I'm sure they have a spare chassis they can roll out, but losing a chassis is an incredibly expensive thing for a Formula One team. And actually, you mentioned the Malaysia incident with Roman Grosjean a few years ago. There was that went on and on and on, dragged on legally because whether the Malaysian circuit owners would need to pay Haas for the damage they did to their car because it was their fault. So I imagine we're going to have all of that to deal with as we go on. But I mean, obviously a disaster for Ferrari, and not of their own making for once.
And this is interesting now, isn't it? Because in usual circumstances, F1 is the championship, the FIA is the governing body, and Las Vegas GP would be the race promoter. With this deal, Formula One is now the promoter, and I know what Formula One would be saying if this had happened at the Belgian Grand Prix or the Monaco Grand Prix. I'm sure they're going to shade some of the blame to the FIA, but they'd also say, oh, you know, this promoter's had plenty of time. It's very interesting now because they can't do that. This is on them as much as it's on anyone else, because like Laurence said, there's been so much time to do this, so much money's got into it. $500 million has been spent on this event, so it's put them in a bind in that sense. And I think from a PR perspective, that's the thing right now they're probably trying to work on.
And got to be unacceptable for so many reasons, not just for tonight's FP1, but this being the penultimate race, and obviously Ferrari and Mercedes trying to hash things out. in the Constructors, this is a devastating blow for them as it relates to jockeying for position with not a lot of runway, Laurence, left to go in this season.
Yeah, and that's more money lost as well, because
Yes.
if they felt that they could have, this is the incident that set them back and they didn't make up the 20 points difference, well, that's a huge amount of money in the Constructors' Championship, which divides where the prize money goes.
And
Ferrari
Ferrari needs it.
That's a fair point. But still, it's a sport. It's meant to come down to what the drivers and the cars can do, not what the track does to the drivers and the cars.
Sure. Can we talk a little bit about this track? We will see it in all of its glory. Second longest, potentially one of the fastest tracks on this circuit. Just under 4 miles. It's 17 turns. It's supposed to be fast. Hopefully the weather holds up Saturday night on race night. Spencer, are we fired up once we get these cars out there, once we get all these drain covers figured out, to see some of this straight line speed that this track's going to give us?
Absolutely. I mean, they call it the flying pig for a reason. It's shaped
It does look like
kind
it.
of
It
like a
does
flying
look
pig
like
if you
a
see
bacon.
it, right? But also big straightaways, okay?
Yeah.
That's really what you're talking about here. The overall impression, I think, when they designed this track and when they picked the course and they picked exactly where it was going to go, it has to look like Speed Racer, right? Like, part of this is using this set, okay, the entire city of Las Vegas, as the backdrop, as the setting for this, all right? So it will look insane, but I think the performance will be there for those who are just all about maybe not the more technical elements of racing and demonstrating handling corners and everything. No, straight line speed's going to be nasty here.
I mean, I was stood trackside pretty much as that happened, so I managed to get out there ahead of the session. I saw the full 10 minutes from the strip, just down to the corner that goes off it. I don't know the numbers yet, I haven't learned them. But it was spectacular. The cars weren't quite at full speed. There was still a lot of them finding their way around. But the Red Bull went past, sparks pouring out the back of it. All the lighting of the Paris Casino and the Bellagio on the other side behind it. It looked incredible. And there were fans there. There were people stood behind barriers where they couldn't see, just cheering that the fact that the cars had gone out. So everything was there for it to happen. Then, of course, we only got 10 minutes.
What I think is interesting, too, I always come back to the odds. I keep bringing back gambling. But when you looked at the numbers before we started FP1, which you can bet on, is there was only 2 people that were, Max was the favorite to win it. But when you look at race day, there were only 2 people that were figured as favorites, usually with minus money. Usually you have 3 or 4 because whether it's, Lando, Max, usually Lewis gets thrown in there. But because the unknown nature of what we're about to get into, that was intriguing from a betting standpoint. Okay, we got to get some data. We only have a couple nights of data, a couple sessions, and then we're going to put some money on some horses and see what happens here. That losing this time affects that, and I think that adds even more to the uncertainty of what we're going to see here coming up. And I will put one more thing in. They posted these were official results after 9 minutes. Again, you can bet on those. So if those official, Leclerc won. So he won FP1. So just going to toss that out.
Are you in the black now?
I did not bet. I'm not that big of a degenerate. I have no clue what's going to happen here. Let's fire out some money.
This is a safe space, man. If you
I didn't
let it out.
I guess I just said if I didn't know, if it was the most unpredictable, I should have thrown out some flyers. I did not.
Discussing
but yes,
gambling in Las Vegas.
So that's where you draw the line. Not Dartmouth covering the first half.
I feel like basketball is like my thing. I got ins there. I'm good at that.
Hey, listen, just double checking. Again, we have some of the team principals discussing the goings-on and the catastrophe that was the first 10 minutes of FP1. We know they've been vocal thus far, and we know once a microphone eventually finds its way in front of Max Verstappen's face, he too will have something probably not so delicate to say about what just happened. Obviously, after last night's launch party, he said it felt like a bunch of clowns standing up there in front of everybody. We know what his position is on the glitz, the glamour, the pomp, the circumstance that surrounds what ultimately he wants to be here for, which is just to get in the car and rip it for 2 hours. Let's just play a little game. It's Vegas. We're going to do a little improv. Spencer, I want to start with you just to kind of warm us up. A microphone is in your face. You're Max Verstappen. Max, what do you think about how FP1 ended? What's he saying?
Clown show. That's it. Just clown show.
And then just drops the mic that he's not holding.
Drops it. Yeah. Goes it.
I got to get back in the sim.
Yeah, I've got to go back to the sim racing. That's what I'm going to do.
You say what? A microphone is in Max's face.
Well, I'm going to say what my Uber driver said earlier when I asked him what he thinks of the race. It's a hot mess. That's what. I don't know if Max would say that, but our friend Luke Smith says that a lot, and I think that I'd love to hear Max say that. It's a good phrase.
Lawrence, you want to take a crack at it?
It's a joke. That's what he would. I'm pretty sure that's what he would say. Like it will just come out. And the great thing about Max is that there's no barrier. He'll just say exactly what he feels about these things. And he was saying, okay, he was criticizing all the pomp and ceremony, like you said, around this race. But he said, I don't expect F1 to listen to me. You just asked me what my opinion is. This is it. I know people like this. I know there's money to be made out of this. Fine, go ahead. But I'm only interested in getting in the car. And then he gets in the car and this happens. So yeah, it's a joke.
Dalen, I mean, Max, what do you think about F1 ended?
He's going to say it's a joke. He may just laugh. I think he's going to be like, yeah, I told you. I'm good.
Yep.
I thought he'd be pissed, but we were on walk and talk the way over here. Nate's like, he might just think it's a joke. And I think that's probably what we'll laugh at everybody else, like I told you.
I did see someone from Red Bull on the walk down, and I said, how's Max? And she diplomatically said, I haven't seen him yet. But I think that means he's somewhere maybe having a little chuckle to himself.
Sure.
But here's the thing with that as well. Like Max especially, I think, even though he said all the things he did say yesterday, a lot of these drivers, I think, can stomach all the nonsense around the race.
Sure.
If they get here and they enjoy the
race,
the racing stuff.
Of course.
And this is the issue they're going to have. I think a lot of drivers are like, you know what? We're not stakeholders. You guys have spent the money. You do what you want to do to promote the event. As soon as you impact the quality of the racing, that's when we really hear a lot of them come out and speak about it. So that's something to keep your eye on as well.
Just real quick with the drivers too. I know we've all talked to them yesterday, and I was asking them a lot about their body clocks. Like, what are you doing? They're trying to stay up to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, sleep later, try to peak around 10 o'clock, which is race time on Saturday night here, local time. And now you've been sitting around all day. They can't sleep that late, they're saying. They're sitting around all day. You think you're going to get in the car and at least rip it for an hour, figure some stuff out, walk away with some learnings, and now you're standing around again, and now you don't even know if you're going to have a chance in FP2. I just imagine being incredibly frustrated and honestly freaking bored.
Yeah.
Like just bored right now.
We spent some time with Lewis Hamilton last night, and he was saying, I'm trying to go to bed 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, so that's the thing. So obviously,
not sitting at the tables, because that's easy to do actually.
It's hard enough trying to go to bed at that time, and it's got to be even that much more compounded difficult when you're going to bed upset at what just transpired in what was supposed to be your first practice session on this track. And
when I spoke to you, mentioned about Hamilton, Ricciardo yesterday said the thing he was looking forward to most with the sleep patterns was, he said, I'm going to be doing as many laps as I can because that's going to jolt me awake.
Great.
So now they've at least lost this hour. I mean, I know how drowsy I've felt this week. I'm sure you guys are the same.
Yeah.
You've got that long wait until then, so it's all having an impact.
Fortunately, you were drowsy, but was there plenty of room on the PJ for you to sort of stretch out?
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about that another time or now, but I mean,
with the mic in your hand, that's the best time to talk about it, my friend.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
I mean, flew to an event yesterday to drive with Ricciardo from Death Valley to Vegas. We went to the Wynn Hotel. Ended up in the private jet with him.
Yeah.
And that was actually really nice. I know it's a ridiculous flex. I don't even know how to make that sound.
We tease you up with it, Nate Dogg. Which we call you PJ Nate now. So it's
PJ Nate. It might be the only time I do that for a long time. But it was actually a nice chance to have a candid chat with him.
Yeah.
And so much of it was about the importance of this practice session. So
sure.
I'd love to hear what he's thinking at this point.
Again, our friend Chris Medlin, who is just behind us, listening to Team Principals talk. And getting information as it's coming down from F1, an official statement according to them, quote, a single water valve cover on the Las Vegas Grand Prix circuit failed during the first practice session, end quote, which of course goes against what we just said probably at the top of this podcast in saying that they said, FIA said, F1 said, it was multiple deficiencies with multiple covers. So of course, I don't know how they were able to sort of circumvent that information or confirm that they were wrong in that information. But I guess if that's the case, Laurence, I guess that's good, but then why put out the information that it was multiple?
I mean, I asked, and I said, is it more than one? And the answer was just yes. So, okay. But the other thing is even if it is just one, there may be others which are constructed in exactly the same way. Therefore, the chance of a failure is the same.
It's the psychology in it too.
And whatever they do to this broken one, they may need to do similar things to reinforce the others. So I'm not sure one, I guess, okay, that's better than multiple, but it's still an issue where they're going to have to go around and check and do work on pretty much every drain cover around this track.
This is like unacceptable chaos, right? Like that was it.
This is Formula One. You should get used to this.
I know,
we have this all the time.
But like with street circuits, okay, this is an exceptional street circuit because the other street circuits in F1 happen in places where, let's put this a certain way, there is a central planning component. There are abilities to the power to take these cities like Baku and like Singapore, and there's a little more control over your environment. Vegas is chaos. It is chaotic. You have so many different entities, hotels, the city, everybody trying to coordinate this. So I think it was fair to expect a certain amount of chaos, right? You had a level of acceptable chaos. When the actual course starts falling apart, we've entered unacceptable chaos. We've entered the thing that you cannot tolerate.
But this is a problem with motor racing and Formula One especially, is that you can't do a trial run. You know, you can't go and just like rehearse it, because to do that you need to bring these 20 cars somewhere and get them running, which is expensive. And so this FP1 is the trial run, and so you know these things kind of can happen. But you're right. I think this place more than anywhere else, it's been obvious from all the issues that the locals have brought up about traffic and everything. This is a difficult place to hold a motor race at the best of times. They've tried to keep it as open as much as they can, but inevitably there's going to be a few blind spots, I think, and yeah, issues on the way.
Yeah, there are cities you can shut down. It's not just the city never sleeps. Like you can't shut down Vegas. There's other events going on here. As mentioned, there's basketball tournaments, there's hockey games, there's other stuff going on here, and there's people here for other reasons. I will say real quick, we use the word unacceptable, and that's the same word Fred Vasseur said. Ferrari is one of those teams maybe tipped to have a good weekend, given what happened at Monza and at Singapore. Both those races, they finished lower than fourth, both cars, and Carlos won in Singapore. And that was a thought that, okay, they could do this here. That's got to be even more infuriating. Where they're at in the Constructors' Championship, what you thought could be on the precipice, and then you have that happen. It's a nightmare.
Is there, because I know we've obviously talked about the cons in the situation that's happening, is there, Nate, any pro to this whatsoever? Extra rest? Send these drivers home?
Well, I mean, the one thing I would say, and this isn't what did happen is unacceptable. You know,
yeah.
it is chaotic. But what we've seen a lot of the time when there's one team that's dominated, is less practice usually equals a much more chaotic race, a much more unpredictable race. I'm not sure how overtaking is going to be. That's a big question here. But if this creates a situation where we get a mixed-up grid in qualifying because some drivers haven't been able to do practice, the rhythm that we talked about earlier isn't there. If it mixes the grid up from at the end of qualifying, it could really have an impact on the race. So that's a pro potentially, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves at this point, because it could also mean the drivers go into tomorrow super cautiously, and it actually has the opposite effect. So we have to see how
there's got to be a psychological element to this. Yeah, they might get the all clear from F1. All right, good, all systems go. But there's how many hundred of those covers on the street over the course of this 3.8-mile circuit? It's got to be somewhere in their head like, here comes one, I can see it. I hope it's not sticking up or protruding at some point. Let's spin it forward to the race with 2 to go. What are some things you're looking out for, Laurence, just over in the totality of what remains in this F1 season?
Well, it's kind of been the same story throughout, hasn't it? Max Verstappen's been dominating. So I think but what you're starting to look at now is the little bits of hope for next year, and the team's kind of nailing down. I mean, by now they're quite advanced in what they're doing for next year already. So I don't know. I feel like this race was what we were looking forward to at the end of the year. You know, the fact that we were coming to Vegas for the first time, hosting something that seemed impossible for so long for Formula One, and it's not far from it. But they'll probably get it right. You know, I think the fact we're here, that's what everyone was looking forward to. And I think Abu Dhabi, the last race next weekend, which seems bizarre that we're saying that's going to be happening next weekend after everything that was been going on here. But you know, I think that really will just be kind of cars go out, finish the race, and then everyone's thinking about next year already.
How intrigued are you for second place in the driver's standings? Of course, Checo 32 points ahead of Lewis, and I know he's got to have a lot of things break his way, namely the course not breaking, or the track not breaking, but how much intrigue is that pulling your way?
I always find it hard to get excited about it, because the drivers find it hard to get excited about it. You know, second place versus losers, all of that. It's kind of true. Like, if they're not going for a championship, especially someone like Lewis Hamilton, who's won 7 of them, if he's not going for the championship, he struggles to get excited in the same way. He wants to do the best job for his team. You know, if they can deliver a victory before the end of the year, that would be a fantastic morale boost. But realistically, you know, no one's that worried about it. In fact, some drivers don't want to finish in the top 3 because it means they have to go to the FIA prize giving in December, and that's another day out of their schedule when they could be doing something they want to do.
You're going to tell me who those are? I won't put them on my podium bets. Make sure. You tell me offline. If these guys don't want to be at the podium, I'll make sure not to bet them.
All 20 of them. I mean,
well, some of them are already stuck.
Every single one. Max is like, y'all just mail it to me. Like, please, I've already got a couple of these.
When this is another thing I thought about this race was that Vegas has been pretty unlucky that the championship has been the way it has been.
Yeah.
You know, we've had, 17 wins for Max. It was 10 in a row, and then what's it been since Singapore? Another 4 in a row, 3 in a row.
Yeah.
So that element of it, I think, has been a big thing. So I feel like if this does end up being a very chaotic, mixed-up race, it's another kind of feather in the cap for the race, because it can say, well, look, we ended that kind of Max dominance. But yeah, I think to Laurence's point, you know it's a bad season, or at least a bad season competitively, when a lot of the focus is on who's going to finish second, because it's not like other sports where that actually has any relevance, really. It's just another position on the table.
what is interesting, the first thought I had was about how Americans kind of react to these type of things. Love a good comeback story, though. And this will actually make everybody, so it won't just be on SportsCenter tomorrow, this will be on news shows in the morning that this happened at the F1 race, and if it doesn't even continue tonight in FP2, that'll be discussed too. If the race does produce something spectacular in terms of visuals, if the grid is all chaos and different, and we see Max not win, and it actually all delivers, nothing America loves more than a comeback story. So Sunday morning, you get the same thing. The Sunday morning treatment on TV shows might be on. I'm not going to name shows because at the ABC level.
If it's on the ABC network, you can name them.
I was about to say a non-ABC show. Never mind.
Michigan, you're not America's team. Beat it. Mercedes-Benzes and those silver arrows. If with that car they can secure second place in the constructors, is that intriguing to you at all, Spencer? Given how much disdain they have for this iteration of the car, listen, I'll use the word success because they're flirting with second place with the car that up and down to a man they hate in that Mercedes garage.
I'm going to find a way to be entertained no matter what happens in the race. I'm going to find things that I enjoy. I enjoy how much Mercedes hates their own vehicle. That's fantastic humor to me.
Like, I
love
get in
watching
this stupid thing again.
Yeah, and like on the serious end, I do enjoy like the triumph of the human spirit that I have been trapped in this car as one of the most brilliant drivers ever. And I'm sitting there complaining about it mid-race, but still kind of making it work. Okay, Lewis Hamilton is an inspiration for many reasons, but for that alone, he's like relatable, right? When you go, yeah, his car sucks. I've been there. We've all been there. But the other thing I want to like follow up on and just say I've found really interesting. I've loved watching McLaren. I like watching people figure it out. I've loved watching McLaren gradually improve over the course of the season, get way better in the second half. And I don't know, like vibes-wise, I'm a vibes watcher for the most part.
I'm a big vibes guy.
Great vibes. Like Piastri and Norris both, I think, finishing well. That gives me hope for next season to go, okay, we might have an actual competitive race.
That's great, isn't it? That's the optimistic American versus
Yeah.
the two cynical Brits being like, doesn't matter, it doesn't mean anything, it's all pointless. Spencer's here just completely putting the two of us in our place.
I travel the entire globe and I do not care who finishes past first place.
Yeah.
But I still love it, damn it. I still love this sport. Speaking about McLaren, I mean, other than a team named Red Bull, they've registered the most points out of any team. You almost wish that out of this 23 race season, they wish there was a little bit more runway left to see what they really have with Oscar and, of course, Lando coming on strong in this second half of the season. And I'm going to start with the pessimistic guys, but there's got to be something optimistic, especially considering how the first half with this team, given the expectations, Nate, was so glum and in the trains.
Yeah, absolutely. Laurence did a great interview with Lando yesterday. I spoke to Piastri, and the change morale-wise for those two guys has been huge. It's almost like two different seasons, from Austria onwards when they introduced that new car. And Lando, actually, if you look at his form, you were telling me about this yesterday. I think he's finished second at 5 events out of the last 4 events.
The last 5,
Yeah, so he's in such form at the moment, and he's in that frustrating position that Max used to be in when Lewis was dominating, where it's like, well, the best I can really do at the moment is probably finish second to a Mercedes. In this case, obviously, it's Red Bull. So a really nice way for their season to end. They've basically done everything but win that race. They've got obviously a sprint win with Piastri, so that would take the cynicism out of me. If Lando or Oscar could get a win here or in Abu Dhabi, I think going into next year it would give us a lot to talk about as well. But for that team, it would kind of be the perfect way to finish what has been, you talk about comeback stories, that has been the comeback story of the year.
And you gleaned as much from him yesterday in your conversation with him. Was it happiness for the whole team or happiness that he himself personally was able to rebound?
Oh no, it's absolutely for the whole team. I think even more so actually. And the thing with Lando, of course, he's been there since he started his career in Formula One, and he has fully committed to it. You know, for years, people like me and Nate have been asking him, sure you don't want to jump ship? Sure, you know, that Red Bull looks pretty tempting, doesn't it? Like, a place could be opening up there. And he's been pretty steadfast. No, you know, I'm going to stick with McLaren. I believe in the process. I believe in the project. And they're getting there. And the good thing about McLaren especially is that they've kind of done the tricky bit. The aero side of this is what has tripped up Ferrari, it's what tripped up Mercedes, and they've really nailed the aero on their car. The mechanical side is, you know, they haven't really been able to touch as much because it's much harder to do that mid-season. But going into the winter, they've got some good ideas about what they're going to change,
Sure.
You know, in terms of suspension, geometry, stuff like that, and that could unlock another bit of performance again. So, you know, when you're looking at teams that have a chance to really close the gap to Red Bull, hopefully race for victories and take a few off Max. McLaren are right up there at the moment.
Race results were one thing. The minute Lando showed up in that restored blue Lamborghini Miura, I was like, he's feeling himself. This is 100% a man
He's back,
who is in
baby.
form. Yeah, he's back.
We have an official statement from F1 here, and it's got a couple words in it, but you'll have to bear with me. After inspection by Formula 1 and the FIA, a single water valve cover on the Las Vegas Grand Prix circuit failed during the first practice session. The FIA, F1, and local circuit engineering teams actively working to review and address the issue. We will provide an update on the race schedule as soon as possible. During this review period, all tickets, food and beverage and entertainment options will continue to be honored, and we remain focused on providing our patrons with a great experience. We appreciate the collaboration of relevant event operations staff to ensure a safe and orderly egress of patrons if they choose to leave. They've just established a safety net for themselves, is what I'm deducing from this statement. It's one valve. We have everybody in the Las Vegas metropolitan area trying to work on this. Your tickets are still good. We'll get back to you when we know more, Nate.
Well, yeah, and this is another part of this race that's been such a talking point, is people have spent a lot of money to be here. You know, both trackside, but also at different points around the city. When we didn't get, we got one lap at the Belgian Grand Prix in 2021, there was a huge fight between actually who owed the fans the refund.
Sure.
So Formula One, they're already probably thinking of that. This is we saw when we were walking up here, there were people streaming out the other way. I don't know whether they're just going to have a quick gamble. Maybe Dalen's going to join them later in town.
Those people were saying their goodbyes.
Yeah.
I'll see you tomorrow.
No, maybe needed.
Yeah,
They'll
yeah.
be there as soon as we hang up these
I
lights.
blew right by that.
Yeah. But it was surprising just to see everybody kind of leaving. There were people coming in as well, but that's a real concern if you're Formula One right now, because refunding tickets is just, from a PR perspective, becomes a nightmare. You know, you imagine all those tickets.
Sure.
You know, there's been talk of the tickets coming down, hotel prices coming down. Formula One's been very steadfast in. People have paid good money for this for a reason, and you don't want to have to suddenly turn around and change that.
Also, they sold this event to the local people, the businesses, these huge casinos, that they were going to bring in around like almost $2 billion, $1.7 billion for this event. Way more than the Super Bowl will bring in when it comes here next year in 2025. And if you're refunding tickets and you're refunding money and you're now cutting into the profit of this thing, there's a whole different discussion to be had. So there's a lot hinges on that if they have to do that.
I mean, the casinos will be loving it though, right? I mean, if people are leaving here,
they do want people in them things.
Like,
It's still early.
They're stuck here anyway.
And
They've got their
you
hotels
know who's definitely on the phone with them? All of them saying you are not open. You were opening that strip when you said you're opening the strip.
Yeah,
you can't
absolutely.
keep that thing going. You can't keep it shut because those guys and ladies want those people back in there.
Also, that hotel tip, very real, very real. Did a little research pre-game here before the show. I can get you $32 for a room, $32 a night on the strip. I'm not going to say where. Might not be the poshest place, but it's doable.
It's on the strip.
So if you're hearing this Friday morning, feel free to book a ticket. Come on in.
There's people listening to this who are like, I spent how much, and it's $32 on the strip?
Yeah. Hey, listen, you can take your chances because there might be a race come Saturday night. Listen, we've gone over the logistics. We've gone over what happened. Of course, FP1 called within the first 10 minutes of a loose drain hole cover. F1, everybody working diligently to try to resolve this matter. We'll pick things up and see if we have better luck on Friday. For Nate Saunders, Spencer Hall, Laurence Edmondson, Dalen Cuff, I'm not Katie George. I'm Gary Striewski. You've been watching, you've been listening to Unlapped, where we talk about F1 racing, except this episode. We talk about structural engineering and integrity of street circuits across America. Thanks for listening.